A few months ago, the world was taken by storm by a Netflix cultural phenomenon. Over the course of a weekend, we saw a show that took over 10 years to produce with no-name actors and a mere $20 million budget convert into over $900 million of impact value for Netflix. Keyword, Netflix. The costume and set designers that made a go-to Halloween costume, the composer who tied 4 notes to that feeling of dread, the writer who made me hate the game of marbles. Zip, zilch, nada. They were paid upfront for their work, but Netflix will reap the rewards for their work for the next century. The pandemic rapidly accelerated the state of play for residuals in film and entertainment. When most of the money that your film would make and your compensation would be from theaters, riding the upside from a streamer wasn't that big of a deal. Netflix would pay a premium for their talent, and in exchange, Netflix got 100% of the rewards. In a post-movie theater world, though, we need to have new ways to link talent and a project's long-term success. The passive income from residuals has historically been a critical wealth generator for the creative class. And as our concerns regarding inequality hit all-time highs, thousands of people are trying to figure out how to make sure that residuals don't die in the age of the streamer. I am one of those people. Content acquisitions, licensing. There are a variety of ways that streamers can get their hands on content rights and intellectual property, but for this video, I want to focus on the acquisitions process. Last year, director Sian Heder and the team behind her film Coda had their film acquired for an unprecedented $25 million at Sundance by Apple. The film was independently financed by equity and foreign pre-sales, meaning that when it was acquired, investors saw a return. The issue? Sundance is 1 week long and fits only thousands of industry officials and film fans into the tiny city of Park City, Utah. Imagine if every startup at YC Demo Day had to be acquired for 100% cash up front within the course of a few days by a few hundred mostly white guys. Does this strike you as a market working efficiently? Back-end deals. It wasn't always like this though. In the pre-streaming age, acquisitions tended to be more of a long haul. A well-structured distribution deal would see investors and key players in a film see upside from theatrical distribution, DVD releases, TV syndication, and other distribution channels. We saw this implemented decently in TV. An actor who had some speaking lines and a hit episode of NCIS or a commercial could have enough residuals to tide them over in between gigs. It wasn't a perfect system. Contracts often would lack transparency, and distribution companies would often find means of using their expenses to use that as a reason to not pay out filmmakers. But the promise of passive income for working 18-hour days for years at a time is definitely on the right track. Streamers have only recently been put under pressure to start giving back-end points to filmmakers. In Europe, countries are beginning to mandate Netflix to pay out residuals to film creators similar to Spotify royalties. Warner Brothers wrote fat checks to talent who were upset with them doing day-and-day releases through 2021, and Disney settled lawsuits with A-list talent who wouldn't get box office returns when Disney was releasing things on Disney+. We're making progress towards a world where streaming and upshot can coexist, but if music royalties have taught us anything, centralized subscription-based royalties will likely not be enough to sustain most artists. Crypto bros save the day. Espérate, Eric. Passive income, cultural-based financial products, data transparency. Is this a crypto bull case? Kinda. For the past year, I thought the answer to this issue of riding profits for filmmakers would lie somewhere in the NFT space. I joined every movie DAO I could. Blockbuster DAO, Hollywood DAO, Filmmaker DAO, Movie Studio DAO. Do you want me to go on? I could go on. Each one essentially had the same vision. They would create a DAO where members voted on the films being made, and then they would mint NFTs to get some money in the treasury. From there, they go into production on a movie and then distribute it under their own streaming service where users paid in crypto to watch the film, and a smart contract would directly send those profits back to the members of the DAO. Meanwhile, your movie is such a hit that those original NFTs also accrue value. I could try to pick these plans apart bit by bit, but I actually really like the people I ended up meeting in here, and there's no point in bashing on people with a dream. So I'm just gonna boil it down to one major issue. Movies are a shitty investment. In my film financing and film law classes, I learned that the first rule of independent film financing is to inform your investors that they're putting their money into this project for fun. Obviously, there are moments where investors see returns, but the long tail on content is bleak. The odds are against you, especially when you're a scrappy DAO without many connections to talent. Opening film financing up to retail investors democratizes one of the riskiest, most illogical asset classes on earth. It's fun betting on movies, but it's not fun losing your money. And after 90% of these crypto film investors get burned, especially through a year of Fed tapering, I think this new form of capital is going to dry up just as quickly as it popped up. That's not to say I don't believe crypto will be a critical part in reducing artist inequality, but it's nowhere near a silver bullet. The Squid token, meme stocks, NFTs, shit coins, they're all reflective of this demand for some sort of culture-based asset class. NFTs in particular have proven to be some of the most innovative ways to let content creators monetize the growth of their project after it's been bought. I think it's inevitable that we'll see a stock market for film residuals, but if we want this to see mass adoption, we're going to need to mitigate the risks currently associated with investing in media. AVOD, baby! Wait, all right. AVOD, baby! Alright, there we go. The most consistent and transparent means of passive income in media during the digital age has been advertising video on demand. It's still incredibly hard to make a living, but YouTube has paid out over $30 billion to creators. And startups like FilmHub make it easy for independent filmmakers to get residuals off of advertising video on demand on services like Roku TV, Tubi, Fubo, etc. Over the past year, we've seen Roku, Salesforce, Grindr, MailChimp, WeTransfer, REI, and more heavily invest in their own streaming and content businesses that allow these firms to better monetize their audience rather than continue to just buy views from advertising platforms. If there is a silver bullet in reducing the risk of film investment, that trend is probably it. The rise of software as a service streaming. If you were wondering how Apple could justify spending $25 million on a film acquisition, it's because the word of mouth from that movie alone helped them sell a few iPhones. Or got people to keep their subscription to Apple TV Plus, which, when it came time to upgrading their phone, meant they were going to once again buy another iPhone. Daddy Bezos famously said that every time we win an Emmy, we sell a pair of sneakers. Leveraging media to keep people within your ecosystem has become a proven way to reduce churn and improve customer loyalty. There are thousands of other software and e-commerce companies out there who I think could use this same tactic. What if Salesforce could provide exclusive content to the employees of all the companies that subscribe to them? Overnight, you're in millions of homes, and employees might actually prefer their company use Salesforce over another CMS if they fall in love with a show. A marketplace for licensing rights. Rather than give investors or filmmakers residuals on their movies when they're streamed, what if we gave them residuals when they're licensed? If every film licensing agreement came with an automated dividend, and we could pivot industry standards away from permanent content acquisitions, there's potential that this is a more transparent way of monetizing content in the 21st century. We're already seeing startups like Cineverse, All Rights, FilmHub attempt to make it easier to license content over the internet, but none of them are focusing on this nascent SaaS market. Audience set pricing. Pair that last idea with token drops, where audiences can stake in a percentage of a project. The amount audiences are willing to pay for any given token informs the cost of acquisition. It's a market cap. We saw an experiment like this in the 90s and early 2000s called the Hollywood Stock Exchange, where audiences could buy fake stocks in movies. That data actually ended up being used to estimate opening box office numbers for films, essentially a proxy for the estimated market value. Combine the ideas. Right now, if you want to independently distribute your project, here's what you do. You let a few hundred people choose whether or not your film makes it into a select few film festivals. And then you let a few thousand people working at a handful of companies determine the price of acquisition, and you see little profit beyond what you're initially paid. Theoretically, in a stock market for residuals with diversity in projects and buyers and therefore risk, here's what you could do. Let thousands of filmmakers judge your work, pay to stake in it, and determine its value. And let thousands of distributors purchase content over the course of a few years. creating more opportunity for films in the top 1% of market value to see returns for their investors. Closing thoughts. This idea does not address piracy, securities law, the cost of hosting video, volatile markets, crew compensation, the pros and cons of centralization, and so many other variables. It's a big idea that doesn't necessarily make it a good idea. But this feels like the most sustainable way to allow artists to actually ride upside from their work as theaters begin to die and we need to build more infrastructure for streamers. Creating the residual and investment infrastructure of the future has potential to let creatives rest. It's one thing to work 15-hour days through your 20s and then take your feet off the gas as you get older and you have some success under your belt. And it's another to work yourself to the bone because you never get to see any of the value that you created.